Hey everyone, me and Julian, we are going to talk about the Query Plan Explorer and tracing for Hasura DDN. So Julian, yeah, go ahead and tell us about the agenda.
Thanks, Paritosh. Yeah, so this is a bit about what we're going to talk about here. The important thing for you to know is that we're going to talk about two tools that are going to help you create performant and APIs at Hasura, and also a good way to debug them to make sure we know everything we have to about them and make sure we know where to find the little pieces that can be tweaked. So we have the best API we can possibly build at Hasura. So we'll start with the query plan. We'll see what features it has, what it allows you to do. We'll then do a comparison with V2 and then go through some examples that show the different use cases where you can take advantage of the Query Plan Explorer. And then we're going to talk a bit about tracing, which is another really exciting way to get to know the different requests that are coming to your API and see what's happening underneath. So we also go through some examples there. So maybe we can start by looking at the Query Plan Explorer. Um, as you can see here, it's gonna, every time your users fire a request against the API you built at Hasura, you want to plan how that's gonna behave. You want to know because Hasura, as you know, Hasura DDN is a microservices architecture. You want to know which microservices it hits and where are you gonna have like parallel execution of tasks, where are you gonna have sequential or what's local. And this is also that you know how to optimize Hasura, but also how to understand you understand how everything works while you're building your APIs. So, and this is very different to the explain functionality in V2 because we also gave you a way to understand your queries a bit more. But in V2, we only showed the execution plan and the SQL query uh, explain functionality. So you know at the query level, at the SQL level, how everything behaves. But now in V3, we also handle remote relationships. So that means you'll have a wider understanding of where uh, of how your requests will work. So maybe we can just show you some examples that this whole thing is clear, and Paritosh will make sure you get to know a bit more about this.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. So we will start with a simple example. So this is a query where we have a model called users and we have another model called card. And those two models are actually, they are from the same data source. So basically they are backed by the same data connector. And we have a relationship between user and card, and that relationship is named as cards. So this is a simple example where we are querying a model and a local relationship. So let's try to see how the query plan will look like. So you can see that it only has a model select because the local relationship is actually handled by the data connector. So what Hasura V3 engine will do, it will just create a query and it will send it to the data connector. And you can click on this model select and see what that query is and what is the actual execution plan and the SQL query. Like if it is backed by Hasura Hub Data Connector, then you can see the execution plan and the SQL query, and you can also analyze the SQL explain. Moving on, here we have a remote relationship. So we have a model called users in data connector, which is backed by a data connector. And we have another model called review, and we have, which is from another, like some other data connector. And we have created a remote relationship between the two. Now, as you can see here that this will be a sequential execution. So first we need to fetch the user model because for fetching the reviews, you actually need some data from the user model, right? So first we fetch the user model, then for each of the user we do the model select from the reviews model, and then we do a hash join. So hash join is basically making sure that uh, the review for a particular user goes with the particular user data. And moving on, you can see that we can have some more complicated queries. So here we have two root level queries. One is the users, one is fetching data from user model, and another is fetching data from product model. And then we have remote relationship reviews and orders for users. Now let's see what the query plan looks like. So here we can see that it is going to execute things parallelly. Here we will have a parallel fetch from the products model, and then we have some sequential steps where we are fetching data from the user model. Then we are going to parallelly fetch from reviews and orders model, and then we are going to hash join, and then we will get the result. Next, we have a nested relationship. This is also interesting because here we have a remote relationship with a model which actually has a local relationship with the top level model. So we have a model called user and a cart, which both are backed by the same data connector. And then we have a carts item, which is backed by some other data connector. And we have a relationship between cart and cart items. And then we have reviews which have a relationship with the user's model. Now, the query plan for this looks something like this. First, we need to select data from users because once we have the data from user, then only we can fetch the reviews or cart items. Now, this model select will be also interesting because it will include the data for this local relationship as well. Next, we will do a parallel execution where we fetch for the reviews. So this one, and also for the cart items, and then we will hash join. Yeah. Moving on to tracing. This is another very important feature which can be used for debugging and optimizing. Yeah. So Julian, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Paritosh. Yeah. So traces are really important because we saw the explain functionality. That's a way to plan your queries. That's a way to plan your API. But the good thing about tracing is that you can see every request that hits your API and see its behavior, see where the parallel execution happened, where the sequential part happened, where the different microservices that Hasura operated, and that's great for debugging. That's great when you have some slow part and you want to know where to optimize that. And also to monitor performance in general. So everything's better with an example. So now Paritosh will show you a bit more about tracing.
Yeah. Thanks, Julian. So we will start with a simple example where we have a selection from a model called users, and we have a remote relationship with another model called reviews with the user, and then we have two more selection from other models called products and cards, and all the user product and cards are belonging to different data connectors. So the tracing will look something like this. It is a bit small. I'm sorry for that. So we can see that first it hits the outer layer of the endpoint slash GraphQL. Then we handle the authentication part, and once the authentication part finishes, we actually start handling the request. And for handling the request, we have more steps like execute and execute field plan. And in the execute field plan, we can see that there are three NDC requests starting at once, right? So these are parallel execution of the three root level fields that we saw: users, product, and cards. Now, for the first execution, when it finishes, we can see that another execute NDC query starts. So this is for the remote relationship for the reviews. And similarly, this tracing also helps us visualize how much time is spent for each of the NDC queries so that we can see that we can optimize maybe somewhere that this NDC is actually taking much more time. So maybe we can think of some ways to optimize this. I will show you a quick demo because this was too small to show. So I have set up. So by the way, all of these features are live on prod, so you can go and actually check it out yourself. So this is the explain query button, and clicking on this will actually open up the explain. And you can click on all the model select and actually see what is the query request, And this will also include the NDC explain soon. And you can also click on these for each nodes and see what are the requests that are being done. And when you click on this view trace, so when you execute the query, you will see this view trace button here. And clicking on this will actually give you some trace ID, and also it will give you the query details. Here also you can see the explain explorer, right? And then we have some topology where you can see what are the APIs, where are the connectors, where are the data sources. So I think these are too small to look, but yeah. And then finally we have this tracing where you can see all every bit. So here you can see that the handle authentication took 41.08 milliseconds and so on. And then we have this execute, and clicking on each of these traces will give you more information about it. So for example, here the database request was super fast, and you can see like there are much more information if you want to debug it. And if there are errors, then you can also see the error messages here. So that's all from the tracing part. And finally, we have the documentation for these two, and you can check out the documentation. And yeah, and so these are on prod, so make sure to check it out and play around with the tools.
This is awesome and really helpful stuff. I know for me, I was using another service, building something over the past couple of days, which I won't name, and debugging was a pain. If only I had these tools right in front of me like this, it would have made things so much easier. So thanks, folks.
Amazing. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you.
thanks.